Alrighty, welcome everyone. This is No Contact Initiation, the Nietzsche edition. All right. So what we have first, starting off, is you and her, or as you may have come to realize, it seems like you versus her now, in some way, shape, or form. It's almost gamified. But my idea to you is that honestly, this needs to go away. Okay. Like truly, but truly, this has to be the case. This is how you know it's for real. What made me start this is Chris Sider's program. I used to be part of it, and I used to help a lot of guys go through their thing. But I got disenchanted much later down the road, and it's because of these points of contention that I have here. Right, it's the false hope of reconciliation. It draws upon you. It almost pretty much lures you in with that. The another issue is that she remains the access. Like almost everything you do in the program is centered around her, and to me, that's a huge problem. I'd rather just have everyone rip the Band-Aid off, especially men, immediately. It's too modern for what I think is an actual genuine soul problem. Genuinely, it's a soul problem. It has the tendency to provide herd comfort, and I think this is inherently feminine. We don't need this. We don't need this. We need to be brutally reinvented and repurposed and finding our own mission. It demands the most of you now. Okay, and finally, male truths or red pill truths are tempered so as to not offend anyone, so that it's basically non-existent. Like the male experience, what you experience as a man in today's day and age, like the just a decade ago, things might have been way different, but to me, it's so polarized. All right, women are capable of exercising hypergamy to the most high with almost zero restraint. Yes, this has changed the dating game forever. Social media, the dating apps. Okay, co-ed frameworks do not know they no longer work. They no longer apply. So part what I'm trying to do here is basically re-engage you and reinitiate you back into the animal kingdom. Because this is what I think happens. And it happens so stark. It's so stark. It's such a dramatic shift that you might as well have just gone through an ego death. And we'll get to that. But I wrote this here, in the Nietzschean form, you are a slave to her memory. And I mean, would I be lying? Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Why? Because you cannot bear the thought that she has moved on while you remain in suffering. You beg for meaning in her actions, but what you also secretly crave is power over the past. And yet the past is dead. She is gone. Your suffering is now also self-inflicted because you refuse to will something new into existence, when that is exactly what you must do. Is it not? Okay. You suffer? Good. Curse the weak, the strong molded into power. You were humiliated, betrayed? Good. Then take it as your call to become something more. And you kinda have to, man. You really do. Right now, you are at a crossroads. Okay. Will you stay a broken man, lamenting what has been taken from you, or will you create a new self that renders her irrelevant? The world does not pity the man who wallows. It admires the man who transforms his suffering into strength. Okay? The world does not care about men who are suffering. Not really. When it comes down to it, they don't care. They don't care. So, in the classic Nietzschean form, this is to me a Dionysian initiation. Here are the stages: okay? The shattering, the abyss, the ascesis of the will, or ascesis of the will, the counter turn, the transvaluation of values, the Dionysian rebirth, sovereign projects, cruelty to weakness, and finally convalescence. Now, this doesn't all happen in this order, but I do think that this is pretty on point. So, The shattering, okay? The Apollonian illusion dies. Apollo, the Greek god of order, of self-knowledge, of whatever the vision it was. To me, Apollo, and I think obviously I got this from Nietzsche, but the idea is that Apollo, the Greek god, he basically solidified what was known as the ego for Freud, right? He basically passed that down. So you can see it in a couple ways. Apollo is ego, the known self to yourself, before Freud coined it as the ego, and then before Jung coined it as the self as we know it in Jungian terms. So here in this one, the relationship is over. That beautiful form has collapsed. You're in pain. You probably have some humiliation. There's rage and confusion. So this is the death of the self that has been built up to this point. And here, just so that you can get a little better taste for Apollo and Dionysius, because they're kind of like one of the same. They kind of the same opposite sides of the same coin. As an ethical deity demands moderation from his followers, and in order to maintain its self-knowledge. Know thyself, nothing to excess. Coexist with the aesthetic necessity of beauty, while hubris and excess are considered the truly hostile spirits of the non-Apollon form or realm. Okay? So just to get a better idea of what he is, he's, to me, again, ego, because he draws boundaries among individuals. This is how you know yourself. And if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, you would realize that the puzzling and almost frightening part about the experience is how well you can handle the dissolution of boundaries. This is hard to say for those who don't have a mystical germ or mystical knowledge. You don't have this intuition for the effervescent quality of life, but this is so true. Okay, these boundaries is what we come to know as self knowledge and the ideas for self moderation. When it comes to music, he is lyrics. He is lyricism. When you think about music, what makes most sense of music is the lyrics. This is the concrete, understandable form of music. And that, by contrast, we will contrast that to Dionysius, who who represents pure musicality. It's undifferentiated, almost modes of consciousness, if you think about that. And in The Birth of Tragedy, great book, highly recommend you read it. Great book. In The Birth of Tragedy, he was trying to figure out Greeks willed basically the drama of tragedy into existence. Why they did that, and it says that the tradition tells us quite categorically that tragedy arose from the tragic chorus and was originally only chorus, nothing else. So it came from music. It came from these men who were in tune with the melodic nature of the creation of music. So here we go. The abyss of Dionysus. This to me is when the ego dissolves. You are returning to the animal kingdom, so to speak. Okay, Dionysius appears in his negative form at first because you're not used to him. It's been too long, or you've put him into the background. So you can see Apollo as being ego, and then Dionysius as being shadow. He's the unknown, and he's also the unknown unknowns. He falls into chaos, obsessing, bargaining, longing. You want to reach out. You really, really miss the girl. This is the plunge. This is where you have to confront your own weakness, your dependency on her, and truly, um, your own ego that at this point is non-existent without her. The abyss tests your will. Here is where most men fall back, but no contact demands your best. It certainly does. The important part about understanding the the effect that Dionysius has when you're suddenly thrown into the wild land again is, I think it's kind of partly in this. the awareness of truth from a single glimpse of it. All men can seize the horror, absurdity of existence. Now he understands the symbolism of Ophelia's fate, and now he understands the wisdom of Silenus, the god of the woods. It repels him. This is that kind of like little depression that us guys go through. This is Silenus is nihilism. It is literally nihilism. Like Silenus's main message was that existence is bad, existence is horrible, it's tragic. Why live on any further, and why ever bring any kids into this, right? So this is like that existential, like nihilistic, um, really sad fate, right? But here I think it's important to recognize that Dionysius is when you see the raw form of nature, and it's so apparent in the psychedelic experience. When you see it, he first represents himself as as in his negative form. He first does that because it's so strange, and your mind immediately puts strangeness, unknownness, don't know what to do with it. Also, at this very moment, in this process, at the very moment, you also have a shattered Apollinian vision of the world. So it's almost like the worst two things. It's one thing to engage the world with a sense of, you know, exuberance and sense of honor and valor, and in knowing your limitations and having that self knowledge. But even that's been destroyed. So now Dionysus represents himself in his almost evil form, and he's best known for musicality, that raw, ecstatic form, right? The Greek god of wine. When you're just drunk, the drunkenness, you don't really have a handle on yourself. Like this is the animalistic behavior coming out of it, the uncivilized man. And this is also known to have been um, part of the musicality, of the creation of musicality, right? Hymns and tantras and mantras, and this is what he was talking about Greek poetry, Greek music, right? If we can therefore see lyric poetry as the imitative effulgence of music in images and concepts, how does music appear in the mirror of imagery and concepts? Enchantment is a precondition of all dramatic art. In this enchantment, the Dionysiac, in his transformation, he sees a new vision outside himself, the Apolline complement of his state. And ain't that the truth, right? Like your old self has to die. It's only being reinitiated, coming back into the animal kingdom, that you can now see, so to speak, see the civilized person that you were before. And now you have to reassimilate raw nature that now she embodies. Because to be honest, us modern men in modernity, we're protected from wildlife, right? We're protected from having to go and get our own, what do you call it? Get our food. We're not out there hunting or down our own food. Everything in modernity protects us from all this craziness of nature, shields us from that. It's just like it even shields us from our minds. It's not even there for us to be consciously aware of. And so I think that what happens is that because modernity has enabled woman to be the most hypergamous ever before in all of history, women now embody that raw, chaotic mother nature form. Right. So what they did here is this is like a masculine representation. You could also see this with in Hindu mythology. You know, Kali and Shiva. She could represent to you fruits, right? Lavish, nurturing qualities of the mother, the plump vitality, feminine essence of a sexy woman, and also she can be dangerous. So you see when Kali is in her when you see her evil side, when it's represented as such, you know, she's killing babies, she's dangerous, she might kill you because you don't know what lurks in the night. You don't know what animals, what predators, what predations are occurring. You know, so she represents the world. So this is a cool phase to me because a lot of guys go through this. And this is the villain arc, right? This is where you test your limits, your morality, your potential. You know, this is where you kind of start to burn off the weaknesses. What does not serve me is for God. This is where you start to begin to go beyond good and evil. The higher man is distinguished from the lower by his fearlessness and readiness to challenge misfortune. Okay, it's when you learn to pass your even your own self preconceived notions. And I know I had to. I think you will find it in yourself that what you thought was what you thought was humility was honestly just keeping you from your own potential. So this is you getting beyond good and evil, and it can come in many forms. So the ascesis of the will. All right, this is when you practice discipline over pity. So thus, through this gulf of oblivion, the worlds of everyday and Dionysic reality become separated. Right? So now we can start to differentiate this. But when once more becomes aware of this everyday reality, it becomes repellent. This leads to a mood of asceticism, of denial of the will. Now, this is a very dangerous spot. This is when you have to truly discipline and practice action. Just for at this point, it's just for the sake of it. At least that's what it seems like at first. Because what you wind up recognizing is that after the ego death, and then into the plunge into the truly present moment of the animal kingdom, what you wind up realizing is that first off, that ego dissolution was pretty much in, just that. It was an illusion. The fact that it can dissolve at all is an illusion. It wasn't real. And then this animal kingdom has this essentially it has this tendency to be nihilistic because there is no good and bad and morality in just the animal kingdom. So there's this immediate split. There's this paralytical paralyzing effect. You can get paralyzed there. You have to train yourself not to grieve, although you will inevitably grieve. Each day without contact is both torment and training. Okay, the silence will harden you. So you will either have a forced, or I've seen guys have they girl just moved 1,000 miles away, or you know, um, just just not a good situation. It was either forced or this becomes a self-imposed ascetic practice. All right. Also, one last thing before the next one. There's a sort of like helplessness in which you recognize that this process continuously occurs. So also part of the paralyzing effect is just throwing up your hands, going, "Oh, well, what the hell is the point if I'm just gonna, you know, reclaim the Apolline spirit of the self, of knowledge, of knowing thyself, just to have it get destroyed again." But you recognize this once you get beyond good and evil, the whole duality nature, that it's something to assimilate. So finally, not finally, but at least in regards to, I would say the downward spiral is the acid test of life, right? The eternal recurrence. This is when you can't stop thinking about it. You're doing okay, right? You're kind of just muddling along. You're just pulling yourself along. But essentially, what should happen by the end of it is like you begin to affirm yourself without her. You learn to will the recurrence. You accept it. A little bit of amor fati. If you had to relive this heartbreak, could you still say yes? So the break of dawn. This is when you start to transvalue the relationship and your own values. Transvaluation of values. You are no longer waiting. You are actively transvaluing the meaning of your ex. Okay, you update your own self-adopted limits. You have a new found potential of your own vision. So now you're stronger, freer, more dangerous. You can replace the relationship as a source of meaning, or at least you have. No longer obsessing over the breakup as a central focus. Okay, and finally, you become your own axiom, or at least you start to move it closer towards yourself. You're one who creates your own values rather than being defined by the judgments of others. Very important part. Next step is you begin sovereign projects. Okay, this is the will to power, but in a self reinvention kind of way. All right, you're shifting all your energy into meaningful projects that are important to you, to yourself, not to what everyone else says. To me, this is the more they're more. This is the Nietzschean part about this. It's one thing to go, yeah, doing I'm doing this because this is what everyone says is good. Only you know what's truly good for you. And I think there is a general consensus that we could say, but I think your greatest health, if you're truly honest with yourself, you know what those things are. This is finally, you sent back up where no contact is no longer discipline. It's genuine indifference. You actually are caring less and less whether she ever reaches out or you ever get into contact with her. You've redirected your will to power toward creation instead of reaction and or response to that relationship, that situation that had occurred. Okay, so the rebirth of tragedy. Dionysius has been assimilated, where he had at first showed himself as terrifying. He is now showing himself in his lively, vital form. This is the man in his full vitality. He's like the good. He's like the guy who can drink and is the life of the party. Somehow, magically, is like the life of the party. He doesn't get into fights. He's not like what I mean. It's just imagine like the perfect drunk. That would be that guy. So your relationship with nature, with the animal kingdom, has been properly updated. You stop calling that version of love. You stop calling that version of love what it was. You stop worshiping it because in truth you recognize that as your own projection. Right? You love the vision of yourself that you had when you were with her, or the vision of yourself you saw through her. And I think one important key here is to recognize that romanticism has now been properly exercised. Okay, it is aesthetic. Only women, only women experience romanticism. You may think you do, but that is something that you have exercised from you now. Okay, it is nothing but an aesthetic art of expression of your care for this woman in a obviously loving, but like more than that, right? But that's all it is. That's all it is, and it is what it is. It's not that you won't love. It's not that you won't show romantic gestures. It's just that you have finally assimilated that this is an aesthetic practice. It's just a show, but it's not necessarily a show of your heart. You see what I'm saying? It really does need to be like that. You cannot actually love a woman in the old fashioned, modern, romantic way. Finally, it's convalescence. Convalescence. A return to the unapologetic, healthy version of yourself. I got here a little. I got a Nietzsche thing right here. God is dead, but my engine's divine. I thought this was so Nietzsche of him, to have a picture of like almost himself on there. It's almost got him there. So joy is the final weapon of the strong. Only the weak stay bitter. Truly, only the weak stay bitter. You finally realize the absurdity of your previous suffering. It's almost comical. He can't believe he once felt so desperate. You recognize your greatest strength is found in your own health, in your greatest vitality, in health, in spirit, and joy, and all of this from spirituality, from your physicality, all of it. The greatest thing you can do, the best thing you can do, is be and do everything that is good for you. And you know what those things are. You do deep down, you know what those things are. Okay, so I think it's a good idea to adopt this this idea of arete, the Greek the Greek idea of excellence, which is a man who is all around excellent. Okay, this is the culture man. This is the guy who can almost like it's almost like he can do everything. He cooks, he can fix a car, right? And when I say cooks, I mean he's cooking like nice meals. You know, he's bartending at the parties, he's dancing at the parties, he knows how to somehow sing, he's playing piano. Um, He knows somehow found time to learn how to kickbox. He still found time to probably not just dance, salsa, bachata, all this jazz. It's almost like he can do a little bit of everything. He's a all-rounded, well-rounded man. I think this is a good time to adopt this practice. This is basically what it is. He's well. I can continue going, right? He's well spoken. He's got a good physique on him. Maybe he plays a bunch of different sports. It's almost like he's always got something going. He has this circumference of things that he just engages in and can do pretty well. So this is a good thing to adopt because to me, where a lot of guys stop is just that they get good at only a couple things, and um, you get complacent, and especially you get complacent in relationships. You forget how to get that will to that dog in you going. Damage control. If you're in damage control, let me know. I would love to know your stories. Drop a comment. Hate to be this guy right now, but if this helped at all, please like, comment, or subscribe. Helps the channel out. Especially helps me know if this was helpful content or not. But damage control is when you can't stop messing up. Can't stop breaking no contact. Okay, if you need some help, reach out. Let me know. Either join the Discord and message me there, or just hit the comments up. Finally, this is a couple of just so we get an idea of where your ex is at. This is the stage of no contact for your ex, right? At first, she's happy as hell. Her girlies are taking her out on these festivals of distraction, right? And finally, some cracks start to appear. She starts to have her own little valuation and the counterattack. The siege breakout, this is when she maybe reaches out, maybe likes a Facebook post. If you're sticking to no contact and doing it well, then she moves on to the next stage, doubt or remorse. And then finally, acceptance or reclamation. You know, she moves on quietly, or she reaches out. But to me, this is I've made this only to just give it some light, but I do still think you need to just skip all this. Who cares what she's going through? Who cares what this is? Okay, you need to become ruthless again. You need to become absolutely unapologetically selfish for your own great health. Only then can you truly be a man who can bring joy to others, who is capable of rejuvenating others. Only when you have yourself to the greatest again. What is more pathetic than a man defined by his past? You claim to love her still, right? So I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this because this is only a statement that I think is more or less just tough love that you need. Okay, you you don't partake. You think you may love her, and I swear I know where you're coming from, but no, you love your suffering. At the moment, at the beginning, you love your suffering because it allows you to avoid the harder task of becoming more than the man she left. Stop crawling in the dirt, begging for meaning in her rejection. Create meaning through your own ascent. Become so undeniable that the very memory of her pity for you turns to dust. No gods, no fate, no longing, only your will, your power, your transformation, your next chapter. Okay? You don't need permission and you don't need anyone's validation. But it does I'm not gonna front. It does seem like some sort of hat trick. You're almost being Promethean at this point. In the Nietzschean sense, the idea is to create something out of nothing, and that's what you got. You at this issue, at this problem, at this point, you're creating a new identity. So get rid of the things that made you weak, and it's probably going to be a lot of it, honestly. But I hope that helped. Again, I'd love to know your stories. Like, comment, subscribe for more. Deuces.